Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm reacting to my second Spooky Vibes video for you guys, and this was titled Three Shocking Thunderstorm Horror Stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road in the back, shall we? Okay, everybody, here we go.
Have you ever had that gut feeling that something isn't right? Like, you can't quite put your finger on it, but you know danger is near. Almost like when you can sense a thunderstorm is coming, but there isn't a cloud in the sky. I want you to listen to this. When I was 15 and trying to earn extra cash on the weekends, I would end up dog sitting. I'd dog sit for my neighbors, my family, and anyone who paid me honestly. Well, one weekend, I was asked by this family, the Carsons, to dog sit their husky, Tito. Now, one thing you should know about the Carsons, they're rich. I'm talking Porsche in the driveway and a 6-bathroom house rich. So when Mr. Carson asked me to watch their dog Tito for the weekend, I immediately said yes, knowing the pay and the tip were going to be great.
Heck yeah, I would agree with that too. Because if you're working for a rich family, then you'll be rewarded about 10 times more than what a regular person would. Now, if I was dog walking for neighbors around here, I wouldn't care how much they paid me. As long as I get my exercise while walking the dog, that's fine with me. But also, since this person said husky, those dogs look beautiful. And I love looking at those videos that people make with their huskies, making them trying to speak and everything. I said, oh man, me and my dad thought that was adorable. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here, so let's just continue on with the story, see what happens next.
The Carsons were going to be gone till Sunday afternoon. They gave me the list of instructions for Tito and $50 for dinner money on account that I would be spending the nights there because they did not want Tito to be left alone. I guess the story really starts that Friday night, the first Friday I was staying at the Carsons. By all accounts, Tito was a great dog. He listened, didn't bark like a maniac, and liked to cuddle. Pretty easy money if you ask me. Well, Friday night, that's when things absolutely took a turn for the worse. I had just gotten back inside the Carsons' house from taking Tito on his final walk before bedtime when it started to thunder and lightning. I remember thinking that I was lucky that I just finished the last walk for the night. Otherwise, I'd be soaked to the bone. Anyway, after I gave Tito a treat for being a good boy, I put him in his cage in the kitchen per the instructions Mr. Carson had left me. After I made sure the cage was locked and secured, I said goodnight to the pup and headed for the living room. I want to say around midnight is when I started to doze off. The Carsons had a giant 80-inch TV in their living room, and I took full advantage of watching a horror movie on AMC.
First of all, I would agree that if you did not get to that house quick enough before the rain started pouring, yeah, you would be soaked. It was almost like God trying to hold off the storm for you until you got in. But seeing an 80-inch TV in the living room of somebody's house, dang, I hate to imagine how much that sucker would cost. I'll be taking advantage of that too, be like trying to look up some horror movies that you just can't find on DVD anywhere. It's so rare on like the Pluto or Freevee services. This person better not fall asleep because you never know, somebody might be prowling around outside in the rain. But I'm just guessing right now. So let's just continue.
That and the fact that there was a raging thunderstorm outside was what lulled me to a gentle sleep. And at 2 a.m. I woke up. You know when you have that feeling that something isn't right? Like, have you ever seen Final Destination? The main character had a premonition that the plane was going to blow up and didn't want to get on. Well, that's what I was feeling at that moment. Something wasn't right. It was pretty dark in the house because I had turned off most of the lights before laying down on the couch. I walked over to the front windows and looked outside. It was still raining cats and dogs. I looked around the living room. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary or tampered with. And that's when I decided to go check on Tito. As I was making my way over to the kitchen, that's when I noticed it. Leading directly from the front door, which was shut, into the kitchen were wet footprints. I knew at this point that I had two options. I could panic and possibly get myself killed by whosever footprints those belonged to, or I could stay calm and stay logical. Logic was telling me that they could have been my footprints from earlier, but then I remembered it wasn't raining when Tito and I came back from his final walk, and secondly, the footprints were fresh, as if whoever they belonged to had just made them minutes ago. I decided, against my better judgment, to follow them. As I reached the threshold of the kitchen, I could hear scuffling and whimpering pleas. It sounded like Tito was upset. I fished around for the light switch and flicked it on. I could not believe my eyes. Tito was out of his cage, his mouth duct taped shut and his paws tied together by a man in a drenched raincoat. There was a large, open duffel bag, and the man in the raincoat was trying to shove Tito into it. But the shock of me turning on the lights caused the man to spin around and see me standing there at the edge of the kitchen. I quickly grabbed a kitchen knife from the knife block set that was near me. I held the knife out, my hand shaking, and told the man to get the fuck away from the dog. I couldn't quite see the man's face, because his raincoat hood covered the majority of it, but the man put his hands up and slowly stepped away. I was reaching into my pocket for my cell phone to dial 911, and when the man noticed what I was doing, he darted past me, through the living room, and to the front door. I followed behind him and watched as the man sprinted into the pouring rain to a white van parked across the street. He started the van and peeled off. I locked the front door, called 911, and started to cut the rope and duct tape off of Tito. When the police arrived, they informed me that the Carsons have security cameras all over their property, and they were able to ID the license plate of the van the man was driving. Now listen to this crazy part. The man who broke in was a man by the name of Kevin Shewood. Kevin was an ex-employee of Mr. Carson. Kevin believed that he was unjustly fired and decided to enact revenge upon the Carsons by breaking into their house, stealing their dog, and holding him for ransom. Unfortunately, Kevin did not expect me to be their dog sitting that night, which thwarted his plans. I think he ended up doing 4 years in prison for breaking and entering and attempted kidnapping of an animal. When Mr. Carson learned that the kidnapping was prevented because of me, he gave me the biggest tip that even to this day I have ever received. And I guess the moral of the story is, when you get that gut feeling that something isn't right, listen to it. It's that primal instinct we've been given to survive on this planet. Use it and be safe.
I am definitely taking that advice because you just never know that somebody might be lurking in your house after you think that, oh, you got everything locked up and you should be safe. Well, somebody might be able to pick the lock and get in, or they might have had a key that they stole from the property. But I am mad that he tried to take the dog and even taped that poor animal's mouth shut and tied his paws together with rope and tried to put him on a duffel bag. I mean, there are other ways of getting revenge instead of taking a person's animal. But thank God that the police said they were able to locate security cameras and ID that person. But thankfully that sitter was there at the right moment, because if she didn't get in the kitchen quick enough, he probably would have got the dog in the bag and took off and left. Let's just continue on with the next story, shall we?
Have you ever been young, dumb, and in love? Or better yet, have you ever been young, dumb, in love, and hunted by a psycho? If you haven't been the latter, then listen to this. Back in 2021, my parents have gone away for the weekend on account of their 18th wedding anniversary.
Okie dokie.
I was an only child, male, and 17 at the time. My parents told me to take care of the house while they were gone, and to not have any friends over whatsoever. Now, me being young and dumb, I told them I wouldn't have anyone over. But the second they pulled out of the driveway, I was on the phone with my girlfriend and told her to come over for the weekend. My girlfriend and I like to smoke the devil's lettuce, or AKA weed. When she came over that night around 6 p.m., the first thing we did was roll a joint in my living room and then head out back to my woods to smoke. And for geographical context, we lived in a pretty rural area. Woods and rolling hills were all my backyard consisted of.
Well, thank God you did not decide to smoke a joint inside the house, because when your parents come back, they'll probably still smell that linger of pot around, and they'll be furious. But boy, if they find out that you invited your girlfriend to come over, when they get back, they're going to make you do something else as an act of punishment. So let's just continue on and see what happens next.
And our nearest neighbors were a good half-mile away. Anyway, back to the story. We had gone a few paces into the woods and sparked up. We were leaning against tall trees, enjoying the scenery. A few raindrops plopped onto my head. I looked up and noticed there was going to be a thunderstorm within the hour. And I was telling this to my girlfriend when she hushed me. She was looking out into the vastness of the woods, tilting her head and squinting her eyes. And I asked her what's up, and she said she thought she saw someone watching us. And I laughed at this because, again, we live in a pretty rural area, and we don't often see our neighbors, especially in the middle of the woods when it's about to downpour. And I told her the weed was getting to her head, and told her to come on. Let's head back inside before we get soaked. And I was right. By the time we got back into my house, there were huge crashes of thunder, and the rain had started pounding on the house. And we both decided to get into more comfortable clothes for the night and to watch a scary movie. And I think we chose Poltergeist. Maybe halfway into the movie, my girlfriend got up to get a glass of water from the kitchen, which faces our backyard woods. I heard her pouring herself a glass of water when she started to scream. I sprinted into the kitchen, alert, and asked her what's wrong. She was standing by the big back window, pointing outside. She said she saw the same person from earlier, standing right in front of the window looking in. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this time I was a little nervous, because it was just the two of us in our secluded house in the middle of a thunderstorm. I looked out the window and scanned the backyard. It was hard to see on account of the gusting wind and slanting rain, but still, I didn't see anything. And I reassured her that the house is locked. There is no way someone can get in, and that maybe she's still pretty high from earlier.
I don't think this is part of being high, dude. Your girlfriend probably did see somebody out there, and he's trying to reassure her that everything's locked up tight and nobody can get in. Well, if that guy's got a crowbar or strong enough to break the windows or doors open, then yeah, he could get in. They should be taking his girlfriend's scaredness threats seriously.
Just seeing things. My girlfriend did not seem too convinced on my reasoning, but was willing to go back into the living room and finish the movie. But we both couldn't even finish the movie because of how exhausted we were, and both fell asleep within 20 minutes of being back on the couch. And I don't know how much later on in the night, but it had to have been many hours. I remember I suddenly woke up. The TV was still on, and my girlfriend was fast asleep next to me. It wasn't the TV or my girlfriend's light snores that woke me up. It was the jiggling noise. And I got up and looked out my living room windows, and it was still raining and storming as hard as ever. Maybe it was just the pounding of the rain that woke me up. And I was willing to believe that, until I glanced over to my front door and saw the handle jiggling left and right. And I stared in horror, and my only thought was that someone is trying to come into my house. I went back to the living room window and looked out, trying to see if I could see anyone at the front door. And just then, a flash of lightning erupted in the sky, lighting up the area. And there, standing at my front door, trying to pick the lock, was a man. And that's when I heard a click, and my front door started to slowly open. And I did the only thing that came to mind. I screamed like a maniac that I have a gun, and that I'll blow the brains out if they step inside. And the door continued to slowly open, letting the rain in and getting everything wet. And I cautiously went to the door and peeked out. I could see the man now running down my driveway into the night and disappearing into the woods. And I slammed my door, relocked it, and put chairs and desks in front of it for extra protection. And by the time my girlfriend had woken up due to my screaming, I was already on the phone with 911. When the police officer came out, which took about a half an hour, he shed some interesting news upon us. The officer said that there was a string of break-ins in the past couple of days in the area. They haven't caught the person who did it yet, but our break-in fits the same MO. The suspect is picking people's front doors and robbing them. When I finished making my statement and the officer finally left, I profusely apologized to my girlfriend for not believing her. She was right. There was a man this whole time out there stalking us and waiting to break in. And since I was under the age of 18, my parents needed to be called, and they found out that I had my girlfriend over when I told them I wouldn't have anyone. I think me nearly getting robbed and defending the house allowed them not to be as upset with me, which was nice. Also, I don't think that guy was ever caught, or at least it was never brought to my attention. But yeah, that's my story of being young, dumb, in love, and almost robbed.
Well, thank God your parents did not come home and scold you for having people over at the house, because they know that the whole almost being robbed situation was more important, and you almost lost your life because that guy probably would have came in and beat the crap out of you until you were unconscious and take whatever valuables they could find and leave. But thank God you gave them that verbal threat saying you got a gun and you're going to blow their brains out if they didn't leave, because he seemed like he was too scared to go in the house then. But man, I hope they do catch that guy, because people in that area don't need to have people like that just wandering in, picking their locks, stealing stuff, and then leave. But I'm glad he stepped up to be a man to protect his girlfriend, but also went over there to apologize to her. I think you should have, dude. She was telling the truth all along. But thank God they're all right and they didn't get hurt by this guy. So let's get on to story number 3.
Kids have the wildest imaginations, right? They say there's a monster under the bed when, in reality, it's just an old pair of sneakers. But what happens when a child sees something and it's not their imagination? You're about to find out. Listen to this. A few years back, when I was home from college during the summer, I would babysit on the side for extra cash. And for context, I was a 23-year-old female at the time of the story. Anyway, I was babysitting these 2 kids, Corey and Chelsea. They lived in the neighborhood next to mine, so it was an easy drive. Their parents were gone for the weekend, and I was going to be spending the night at their place, playing games, feeding them dinner, and tucking them into bed. These kids were well behaved and never gave me any issues, which, for a babysitter, is a dream come true. Around 9 p.m., after we had played some Mario Party on the Nintendo Switch, I was beginning to put the kids into bed when it started to thunder and lightning. It was raining so hard that I was reminded of that corny saying, "It's raining cats and dogs." The kids, however, who were only 7 years old, their faces were terrified of the flashing lightning outside their bedroom window. I calmly reassured them that it's just a storm, and they are natural and actually good for the earth. After a few more minutes of me calming down their anxieties, I told them that if they need anything or got scared, that I'll be downstairs in the living room. This seemed to calm the kids down, so I closed their door and said goodnight. A half an hour had passed since I put the kids to bed, and I was downstairs in the living room, watching a Netflix documentary. The rain was pounding harder than ever outside, when, Little Corey came into the room, holding his blanket and looking terrified. I paused the show, got up, and bent down to his level and asked him what's wrong. With wide eyes, he told me the boogeyman is outside his window. I reassured him that there's no boogeyman outside his window. It was just the thunder and lightning playing tricks on him, and that there's nothing to worry about. I told him he needs to go back upstairs and be a strong and brave brother to Chelsea. I told him again that I'll be down here if he needs me, and that I would not let anything happen to them. Corey nodded his head reluctantly and went back upstairs.
I don't think this ain't no plain boogeyman situation. It's probably somebody actually standing outside the window. But I don't know. Let's just see what happens next.
At this point, I did feel a little bad for dismissing his concerns. I could remember being their age and believing every shadow at night was a monster, especially during a thunderstorm. 10 minutes passed. I was back to watching my documentary when, again, Corey came back into the living room. This time his eyes bloodshot and tears coming down his face. I hurried over to him, rubbing his shoulders and asking what's wrong. He said the boogeyman is outside their window. This time, in order to truly calm down his fears, I knew I needed to go upstairs and prove there was no boogeyman. I took his hand and we climbed the stairs. When we got to the bedroom, in which the children shared, I saw Chelsea curled up in her blankets, shaking on her bed. I entered the room, reassuring her that I'm here and nothing bad is going to happen. It's just a thunderstorm outside, that's all. As I was trying to calm down Chelsea, Corey pulled me over to his bedroom window and pointed outside. There was a massive tree right outside their window. Corey said to look at the branches. I had to squint because of the pouring rain. I was about to tell them the branches can look scary during a storm when a huge flash of lightning erupted in the sky. With the area briefly lit up, I was able to see clearly into the tree. Crouched down on the top branch, closest to their bedroom window, was a man. He was shirtless, he was unblinking, and he had the widest smile that I've ever seen. When we locked eyes, he pointed at me. Corey and Chelsea both began to cry, both seeing the man as well. I had to blink hard, because this could not be happening. But when I opened my eyes back up, the man was still crouched in the tree, still unblinking, and still smiling. I immediately ran downstairs and made sure all the doors and windows were locked. I sprinted back up the stairs, grabbed the kids, and locked them in the bathroom. I grabbed my cell phone and dialed 911. While I was explaining the situation to the operator, I went back into the kids' room. Another flash of lightning flashed across the sky, and I could see the man was now gone from the tree. 2 police cars arrived on the scene. Even in the torrential downpour, they searched the entire property for the man, something that I was eternally grateful for. And after 20 minutes of the officers searching the outside of the house, they came back inside, soaked. The lead officer said they didn't find anyone, but they did find something. On the tree directly outside the children's bedroom, they discovered marks and broken branches, indicating that there was indeed someone in the tree. They also found a rope and duct tape. That part still haunts me. The police were amazing, though, because they offered to have an officer stationed outside the house the rest of the night, just to make sure that we were all safe. When everything calmed and settled down, I apologized profusely to Corey and Chelsea for not believing them. They forgave me and told me that they were glad that I was their babysitter. Thankfully, nothing like this has happened to me since. I still babysit occasionally when I need the cash, but now, if a kid tells me there's a boogeyman outside their window, I believe them. Stay safe.
Well, thank God this female babysitter saw that man. Because if she didn't, he would have came in and took the kids probably because the cops said they found rope and duct tape. Oh man, that would give you nightmares for life if you went upstairs and all of a sudden the kids you're watching are gone. How are you going to tell that to the parents? The kids said that they saw a boogeyman, but she didn't believe him and told them to go back to sleep, and then they're gone. Then the parents will be mad at you for not doing your job. But I'm just glad that dude did not decide to break in the house and try to find them. And I'll be jumping back if lightning went across the sky and I saw somebody just peering in the window in a tree like this with a smile. I'm also glad that the cops decided to leave one officer there just to make sure they're safe throughout the rest of the night. But I know that guy probably won't be going back there now since that happened. So, like she said, if a kid tells you that they see a boogeyman, just go in there and check and show them that there's nothing out there. But if there's somebody actually out there, then close the blinds, get the kids away from that room, and call the police, and they'll handle it. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more spooky vibes content like this. This has been another successful installment of Tin Man Score Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and I said that's a wrap, and that's day on.